All right, good afternoon. Quick update on some of the SG's activities this morning. A bit earlier today, the Secretary General spoke by phone with President Andrzej Duda of Poland. He said he appreciated the role that Poland is playing in welcoming more than 1 million refugees from Ukraine. The Secretary General told the President he will do everything possible to mobilize the whole of the UN system in coordination with the UN Refugee Agency to support Poland's generosity. Secretary General is also appealing to the international community to fund the humanitarian appeals for Ukraine and bordering states. The Secretary General is thankful for the immense generosity and solidarity shown by all countries which border Ukraine. They have opened their homes and their hearts to more than 2 million women, children, and men who have fled their homes in the last 2 weeks. The UN system, especially UNHCR, the International Organization for Migration, have mobilized quickly to support hosting countries and communities to provide the necessary protection and assistance for the refugees. We will remain in full solidarity with all those communities which have shown such great kindness. On the humanitarian and within Ukraine, I can tell you that the humanitarian crisis continues to deteriorate rapidly, with mounting numbers of casualties, refugees, and people on the move inside the country. The UN Refugee Agency said today that more than 2.2 million people have crossed international borders out of the country. The World Health Organization said that in recent days it had brought in 76 metric tons of supplies through western Ukraine. On March 7th, WHO delivered 5 tons of supplies to Kiev, mainly consisting of surgical kits. This was done in cooperation with local health authorities. For its part, our colleagues at the World Food Programme are establishing the logistics infrastructure to support its own and the wider humanitarian community's response to the crisis, with warehouses contracted in Kiev, Lviv, and Chernivtsi, all in Ukraine, and in other locations in neighboring countries. And also our humanitarian colleagues who are in Moscow held a high-level meeting today with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. Participants agreed to continue strengthening this cooperation for the purpose of facilitating principled and timely humanitarian assistance to all people affected by the crisis in Ukraine. These efforts will build on existing civil-military coordination structures in Ukraine established in 2016, which already serve more than 100 humanitarian partners to enable direct communication and coordination between humanitarian partners and all relevant civilian and military entities in the current context. Go ahead, Jane. Thank you. And in a statement that we issued earlier today, the Secretary General said that 2 years ago, the lives of people around the globe were upended by a virus. COVID-19's most tragic toll, the Secretary General said, has been the health and lives of millions, with more than 446 million cases worldwide, more than 6 million deaths confirmed, and countless more grappling with worsening mental health. He said that thanks to unprecedented public health measures and extraordinarily rapid development and deployment of vaccines, many parts of the world are bringing the pandemic under control. But the Secretary General stressed it would be a grave mistake to think that the pandemic is over. The distribution of vaccines remains scandalously unequal. Manufacturers are producing $1.5 billion a month, but nearly 3 billion people are still waiting for their first shot of a vaccine. This is a moral indictment of our world, he said. It is also a recipe for more variants, more lockdowns, more sorrow, and more sacrifice in every country. Our world cannot afford a two-tier recovery from COVID-19, the Secretary General underscored. That full statement has been shared with you. A couple of notes from Africa. From Abyei, the UN Interim Security Force there is deeply concerned about the renewed violence in the southern part of the Abyei area, which has led to deaths as well as displacement of thousands of men, women, and children, not to mention humanitarian suffering. Our mission says that long-standing grievances and disputes between communities in Abyei and neighboring areas have resulted in weeks of violence. The Médecins Sans Frontières hospital in Agok was targeted, while there's also been 3 armed attacks on UN patrol. And a reminder that attacks on health facilities are clearly unacceptable and could be a violation of humanitarian law. The mission is talking with local leaders and is urging parties to exercise restraint. They have also stepped up patrols in the areas most affected by the recent violence, have provided shelter and protection to people fleeing the fighting. And a quick note from Chad, where we are welcoming the pre-dialogue between the transitional authorities and armed groups set to start on March 13th in Doha in Qatar, as well as the previous consultations held with civilian stakeholders at the provincial level and in the diaspora in recent months. These are important steps ahead of the national dialogue scheduled for May of this year. And the UN mission in the Central African Republic is supporting the National Mediation Council with the launch of a series of training sessions that are taking place this week in Bangui. The project is designed to help the National Mediation Council carry out its work linked to the restoration and extension of state authority, national reconciliation, and the implementation of the peace agreement. Local stakeholders are receiving training by our mission colleagues that focus on dialogue and dispute resolution. The people trained will be deployed in different areas of Bangui, starting with the first district. And in Addis Ababa, about 400 youth leaders from across Africa are meeting today at the UN-supported three-day summit to discuss ways they can contribute to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda on the continent. Among other issues, the young people are considering climate change, strengthening action for women and girls to achieve the Sustainable Development Goal targets, Africa's role in global trade, finance, economics, and digitization, and the role of youth with disabilities in the process. In her address to the forum, the resident and coordinator for Ethiopia, Catherine Sozi, emphasized that young people needed to be fully engaged with the organization as both partners and beneficiaries. She encouraged them to hold their governments and leaders accountable for achieving the global goals. Quick COVID update for you. This one from Malaysia, where a UN team led by resident coordinator Karima Al-Khoury continues to help authorities respond to the pandemic. To date, 80% of the population, that's more than 25 million people in Malaysia, have been fully vaccinated. More than 45% of people have either received a booster, have also received a booster. The World Health Organization continues to provide technical guidance, while the UN Refugee Agency is ensuring that children of refugees are also inoculated. And the International Organization for Migration distributed COVID-19 health and hygiene kits to migrants. The UN Office for Drugs and Crime contributed to COVID-19 tests and other supplies to the Malaysian Police Department. Here, I just want to flag for you, if you're interested, there will be a photo exhibition featuring women campaigning for peace, as seen through the lens of women photographers, that is still being shown in several cities around the world. The exhibit, called In Their Hands, Women Taking Ownership of Peace, is organized by our colleagues from the Department of Peace Operations in collaboration with the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and UN Women. The exhibit is on display as part of Photoville in Albee Square in downtown Brooklyn. How hip are we? It is also being shown at the Expo 2020 in Dubai, as well as Nairobi, Kenya, and Sudan, and it will be open tomorrow in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And lastly, we say a big shukran to our friends in Jordan. They have paid up some cash, and we are now up at 69 fully paid up members. Edith.
Thank you, Steph. A question on the humanitarian corridors. Is the UN involved at all in trying to get humanitarian aid in through these corridors? And does the Secretary General have any comment on the Russian bombing of a hospital in Mariupol today that hit a children's and maternity wing, apparently with a significant number of deaths?
We're in touch with our colleagues at WHO on this. We're also obviously all aware of these shocking reports. We're following up urgently. It bears reminding that we have called, WHO has called for an immediate halt to attacks on healthcare, hospitals, healthcare workers, ambulances. None of these should ever be a target. So we're following up on that. On the convoys, I think this is still the same kind of process as we're seeing yesterday. We're not directly involved in the organization of this. We are obviously in touch with the Ukrainians and the Russian side to try to facilitate the safe passage. We're also trying to get humanitarian aid to where it's needed most. We know some of our local partners are also doing it, but as soon as we can reach those areas, we will.
And one follow-up on Libya. Has Stephanie Williams gotten a response from either side to her request for a meeting?
Stephanie Williams is continuing her various approaches. She is in active dialogue with all the Libyan actors, including the head of the House of Representatives and the State Council. Obviously, as soon as we're able to confirm everything, we will. I mean, to say what we've been saying, that I think it's important that all the political leaders, civil society leaders in Libya put the interests of the Libyan people first and consolidate the gains that have been made for all Libyan people and not go backwards. Pam.
Thank you, Steph. First question is just a clarification. You said that Ukraine now has, the UN Refugee Agency said 2.2 million people have fled?
Yes, I think so. But for
didn't
numbers,
see that on theirs,
for,
yeah.
for I don't know, for numbers, what is important is to look at the UNHCR data portal, which is updated constantly. So I think for the numbers, I would ask you to double check with them.
All right. The bigger picture question is, could you comment on the Ukraine story that they are pulling troops and equipment out of Ukraine's UN missions in order to supply the war effort?
Why they're doing it is up to them to explain. I can confirm that we have been contacted and are in touch with the Ukrainians, and that we've received the official notification that they intend to withdraw personnel and military equipment from the peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They're present in other missions. It's the right, as it is the right of any member state to do that. I also think it's important to acknowledge the tremendous role Ukraine has played, especially on issues of transport and helicopters. Obviously, we're looking at the impact that would have, and we'll be in touch with other member states to replace it. I mean, just like I think we talked about Mali yesterday, with certain contingents withdrawing. This happens regularly, and it's part of the process. But we need to staff these missions to fulfill the mandate given to us by the Security Council.
Do you have any specifics on how many personnel?
They have 250, about 250 troops and some aircraft as well.
All right, and the final is this memo that's been written about you addressed it yesterday. There's new documents that the Irish Times is reporting on. Can you tell us what the memo is and who it went to in terms of limiting language?
I mean,
Thank you.
I think I was pretty extensive yesterday. Been here quite some time. There's always things that are going to be leaked. I can't speak to I'm not questioning, but I can't speak to the veracity of the new document. I mean, I think you could see from it where I think it came from. The point is that, the proof is in the language the Secretary General has been using, the language Rosemary DiCarlo has been using, and the proof is also what we've been doing on the ground. The men and women that have come into Ukraine to help the Ukrainian people, the people that are helping those Ukrainian refugees. We will continue to speak out and speak out strongly, as the Secretary General has done from the first moment of this conflict. I mean, you heard him inside the Security Council with a direct appeal to President Putin not to attack Ukraine, as it would be the most devastating war in this century. You heard him speak again at the Security Council in ways that, frankly, I've never heard him speak. And I think he spoke from the heart, and his words, I think, are unequivocal.
So there's no memo from you, from the Secretariat, that went around saying something about language, limiting language?
There is, as in any crisis, we have media guidelines that we share that are evolved by communicators. We're not in the business of sending out language saying, you cannot say this. Madame, and then Madame.
Stephane, about Ukraine first. Is IOM involved in the refugee? Or
Yes, very much so. They're present on the border countries. They're in Poland, they're in Moldova. I mean, they're wherever they should be and extremely active.
And the second question is about Mali, where 37 Malian people died not too long ago, killed, as it was reported by the Malian army. And I know that the UN mission there announced that there will be an investigation. Mm-hmm. Do you know if the investigation has started? And if yes, what happened?
Yeah, they've announced their intention to do it. We can check with them if it's actually started. Obviously, it depends on security conditions on the ground. I would, remind you that the mission in Mali has a human rights mandate, and they regularly report and investigate these sorts of crimes. Kristen.
Thanks, Steph. We've seen daily the numbers going up of refugees. It's over 2 million now. Any updates on internally displaced people? We're hearing about the hospitals being bombed and schools, and seeing pictures of people hiding for cover in train stations. Are there any numbers on the internally displaced, and what's being done to help them?
Let me see what I can have on the internally displaced, the latest up-to-date numbers. IOM may have them on their website, but it is a number that's sadly growing as well. Alan.
Thank you, Stephane. Russian authorities say that the Russian military discovered about 30 biological laboratories at the territory of Ukraine, and they state that Kyiv was trying to conceal some traces of military biological operations and programs being conducted on these sites. So Russian Parliament, the lower house of Russian Parliament, is going to ask UN and OSCE to conduct some kind of investigation into these facts. Have you received any query in this regard, and what would be your response? Thank you.
No, I mean, we have, at this point, have no information to confirm these reports or these allegations about these kinds of labs. Stefano, and then we'll go, and then Ray, and then we'll go to the screen.
Thank you, Stephane. In case of Kiev fall on if the Russian controls the capital in the next weeks, what's going to be the policy of the United Nations? I mean, the government of Ukraine is the ambassador and everything. They are always representing Ukraine, no matter who is going to be in control of Kiev or the country?
I'm not going to get into what may or may not happen in the next few days or weeks, but it bears restating that the issue of the recognition of governments is one done for member states. The issue of approving credentials is one done by member states. That's just a fact and a policy, but I'm not going to speculate.
Okay.
Alan, I just want to add that our colleagues at the World Health Organization who've been working with the Ukrainian governments said they are unaware of any activity on the part of the Ukrainian government which is inconsistent with its international treaty obligations, including on chemical weapons or biological weapons.
Well, I'm sorry, a quick follow-up, just to make sure, because in this case, we're talking about a member state, Ukraine, right? So it's different than when happens something like this with the territory that is no member state. What I'm trying to get is, no matter, I mean, can you tell us, and the Secretary General, if no matter what happens in the next weeks or months, Ukraine has a member of the United Nations, unless there is a vote of a General Assembly with the majority.
Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken, is a founding member of this organization.
So
no, but
matter.
I'm not going to. But again, I mean, you're asking me for military analysis and speculation, which I'm not going to get into.
No,
I'm just stating fact. Ukraine is a, and I truly hope that I'm not wrong, is a founding member of this organization.
So
Edward agrees with me, which is good. The other thing, the issue of the recognition of governments, the recognition of credentials of permanent representatives, is ultimately a decision taken by member state.
Okay, all right. Then another thing, the internal memo that was sent about who then interpreted that it was another thing, at least you explained yesterday what it meant. But can you tell me at what time it was sent? And 2 days ago? Was it in the morning, afternoon?
I mean, I would ask the journalists who put the memo online. These things.
No,
were
because
posted.
the point is, I wasn't here yesterday, unfortunately. I couldn't ask yesterday. The point is, on the briefing that the day that the memo was going out, I asked, by chance, if there was a problem using the word war in internal communication of the UN. I didn't have any leak. I was just going because I was noticing that for a few days, the word war was disappearing from even your communication.
I think people are looking for conspiracies where there is no conspiracy. Again, look at the words the Secretary General used from the first moment the war started. Look at his words. And it is clear that, at the UN, words have legal implications. Situations evolve. Language changes. But I think just look at what he said from the first day.
No, I looked. I just looked, talking about the 3 days that intercurs from when the law.
If you're asking me if there was a memo saying, for 3 days do not use this word, no, there is none. Okay. Ray.
Thank you, Stephane. Is the Secretary General concerned the fact that there has been 2 Security Council meetings on humanitarian aid and there was no statement or resolution after that? Thank you.
Listen, it's not the first time in my 20 years that it's taken more than 2 Security Council meetings to agree on a resolution. As I've been saying, our work is always enhanced and empowered by unity in the Security Council and by strong messages from the Security Council. Benno.
Thank you. I just want to follow up to Pam's question about the peacekeepers from Ukraine. You just talked about the DRC, right?
MONUSCO. Yeah, that's the only one we've been officially notified about. But they are, I don't want to give anybody any ideas, but I can tell you they are also present in smaller numbers in South Sudan, in Mali, in Cyprus, in UNISFA, in Abyei, and UNMIC.
How
but the bulk, those are all single, except for UNMIS is here. I'll tell you because this is all public knowledge. It's on the website. They have 13 personnel serving with UNMISS, 12 with MINUSMA, 5 with UNFICIP, 4 with UNISFA, and 3 with UNMIC. So you could see the bulk is truly in the Congo.
Thanks.
Okay, Edward.
2 questions. First, any update on the team of the UN in Moscow with the Defense Department of Russia?
With respect, I just read something out a few minutes ago.
Sorry.
But I'm happy to. They're continuing their meetings.
All right.
That's
Okay.
fine.
The second thing is, I think in the past hour there's footage showing that the Belarus embassy in Rome has been attacked by some people. Two people in the night. So any comments on that?
Listen, I haven't seen that report, but it's clear from our end that diplomatic missions, diplomatic personnel need to be protected by their hosts, and the Vienna Conventions need to be respected. But again, I'm not commenting on that particular incident, but that's just a principle that we have. Majid.
Thank you, Stephane. I believe about a week ago, the UN asked for nearly about 2 billion to help the refugees of Ukraine. How much of that money you have received?
Still not enough. I think Martin Griffiths said he was contemplating a release from the Central Emergency Response Fund, but I'll get you the exact number maybe before the end of this briefing.
And since the UN is directly working with the Russian Ministry of Defense, or at least in talk with them, has the UN provided any map of location of hospitals, health facilities?
Well, I mean,
this
is part of the
Just like in
process.
Syria?
I mean, this is part of the process that we're trying to establish, right? Is deconfliction to protect humanitarian installations, humanitarian personnel, UN personnel. So this is part of the deconfliction process, which, as you rightly mentioned, we have operating in different places, notably in Syria, notably for what is going on in Yemen. So we're working very hard to establish the right amount of contacts, both in capital and what is also extremely important with security and military personnel on the ground.
Have you provided those
We're in the
information?
process of trying to get this system up and running as quickly as possible. Let's go to James Reinl.
Thank you, Stephane. I've got 2 questions. The first question is on coronavirus vaccines. Obviously, Russia is a big producer of vaccines, and many of them are available for export, not through COVAX, but in bilateral deals with Russia. Russia, of course, and Russian financial institutions under heavy sanctions over Ukraine, impeding the possible supply of these vaccines overseas. Is this an issue that's come to the attention of the SG, and what do you guys say about it?
I don't know enough about the bilateral sanctions to know what the impact is on vaccine exports. What is clear, and what our principal position has always been, is that sanctions should avoid harming civilians, and that's been our position. Your second question.
Yeah, it's on the Yemen, the Houthis, the Safar oil tanker, and the MOU that you guys agreed with them. Farhan was kind enough to share a copy of the MOU with us, and it's got a lot of details in it, but one of them is that the Houthis get a replacement vessel after this mission is completed, and it also states that they don't pay a thing for any of this process. Given that now the Security Council is referring to the Houthis as a terrorist organization, at the same time as the UN is cutting a deal with them to give them a free offshore oil platform, just tell me, how do you guys square that?
First of all, I think it's clear that the resolution on the Houthis and Security Council has very specific carve-outs for the work of the UN, for the humanitarian work of the UN that needs to be done, and that we don't expect the resolution to impact commercial imports, private remittances, or aid operation. That's one. So we've been working closely with the Council on that. I also know that all member states, critical member states have been briefed on what we're doing with the Houthis. I would also add that the aim is not about supporting one party or another. The aim of this operation is to avert a catastrophic ecological disaster, right? And the solution that was come up with would be to transfer the oil to a new receptacle, so to speak, to avoid the worst. And that has been our one true aim since the beginning.
Thank you on both there.
Okay, Chris, CBC.
Hey, Steph, you're going to hate my question, but I wasn't here yesterday either. Wanted to get some clarity on this language issue, and maybe this is just a simple yes or no. Can UN staff call what's happening in Ukraine war or Russian aggression against Ukraine, or are they being encouraged to use more moderate language?
Chris, I never hate questions, but I will answer your question. But this is like there is kind of I'm going to date myself. A DVR system with this briefing is that there is a transcript and video of it. So you're always even if you don't see it live, you can always watch it in the comfort of your own home later. That's just a nice reminder.
Yeah.
What is clear is if the Secretary General uses language, staff who work for him can use that language, full stop. All right? I mean, we are guided. Obviously, we come up with key messages and so on, but we are guided as Secretariat by the language that our boss uses.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I made sure to just scrub through the Secretary General's statements and tweets, but I have not heard him refer to this as Russian aggression against Ukraine or the war, a war. Am I wrong in that?
You're slightly off. I mean, I'm happy to provide you with.
He keeps calling it military operations, and I only bring that up because the Ukrainian ambassador during the Security Council meeting said that he would ask UN and the staff of the UN to stop calling it a military operation. And so I just wanted to get your reaction on that.
He has. I mean, I'm happy to send you the language that he's used. We've isolated quotes, but he has used the term war. Even yesterday, Rosemary DiCarlo, or 2 days ago, now I can't remember, 2 days ago, used the term war and invasion. Look at what he said in the Security Council on the day this happened. The GA resolution uses the term aggression, which is a term we can use because the General Assembly resolution was not universally, I correct myself, unanimously, no, I correct myself again, was overwhelmingly adopted. Thank you. I'm my non-English speaker, native English speaker sometimes catches up with me. So I'm happy to guide you through what he said, and just as I said, going back 2 days ago to his senior political appointee, head of political affairs, 2 days ago using the term war and invasion, and I think I understand people's interest and the press's interest, but there are a lot of words in the English language that convey these things. We can use different words at different times. But the fact is that the Secretary General has stood firm against this since day one, directly asking President Putin, bring your troops back to Russia. Do not allow a war to start in Europe that could be the worst war since the beginning of the century. I mean, you can. I encourage you to scrub. You can scrub. People will find things they like. People will find things they don't like. But I cannot imagine the Secretary General have been as clearer condemnation of what is going on.
Okay, fair. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you. I'll come back to the room in a second. Margaret Bashir.
Thanks, Steph. Steph, has the Secretary General expressed an opinion on whether there should be a no-fly zone over Ukraine?
I mean, his focus as Secretary General is on diplomatic engagement to try to find an end to this war, to this conflict, to this aggression. And it also has been on ensuring that the UN system is up and running in Ukraine to get aid to those who need it most. He is not expressing himself on that.
And we have one other question.
Yes,
do you have any updates on the talks in Venezuela?
Yes, so I can tell you on that the Secretary General is following the political developments in Venezuela and welcomes a recent statement from the government and the opposition leaders expressing readiness to resume the Mexico negotiating process. He calls on the parties to commit to an inclusive and meaningful negotiation with full respect for human rights and the rule of law. The Secretary General remains convinced that only serious and inclusive negotiations between the government and opposition parties can offer durable solutions to the political crisis and the socioeconomic challenges in Venezuela. The UN stands ready to assist Venezuela in overcoming these challenges. I was given an update on the flash appeal. I don't know who asked what the funding was. I think it was Majid. The flash appeal for Ukraine for $1.14 billion is only 8.9% funded. 8% funded. Did you have
That's not talking about pledges. That's actual.
No, that's the pledges are great, as we always say. It's all about the Benjamins. We want the cash. Edie, did you have another question?
Yeah, I have a follow-up to James Reinald's question on the safer tanker. Is the idea of a replacement vessel a vessel that, like the safer tanker, was actually a storage vessel for oil before it is shipped out?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, is to ensure that the oil is stored safely. So it would be to replace that as a storage facility. Yes, ma'am.
Did you already say where the oil goes? Who gets the oil?
No, the oil stays.
Ah, okay.
The oil stays.
Okay, I have another question.
And again, that's because our focus is really just on ensuring, there's going to be disagreement about the liquid. We just need to make sure that the liquid is stored in a safe manner.
My actual question was follow up on, you already said the WHO said it's unaware of the Russian claim that the Ukrainian government has chemical weapons or biological weapons. We know that from Syria. Russia/the Syrian government are saying so-called terrorists have these weapons, so the next time there is a chemical attack, they blame it on them. Are you concerned that this could happen in Ukraine?
I understand what you're saying. I will leave that kind of forward-looking analysis to you, Benno. Pam, and then we'll go to Stephane.
Steph, just to follow up on UN staff in Ukraine, there's WFP, there's IOM, there's
a lot of
refugees,
agencies, UNICEF,
a lot of agencies.
OCHA,
Have any of them, maybe you've put them out on different platforms, but have they encountered blocks on the food going in, blocks on the convoys?
I mean,
are there any injuries?
No, thank God, no injuries. Material has been going in from the western border into Ukraine. I mentioned that WHO, I think, had delivered to Kiev today. The infrastructure, the systems of distribution is still getting up and running. Obviously, the biggest challenge is the fact that there's fighting going on, right? There's only so much you can do in an active war zone. Yeah, WFP. I said WFP is sending food in. The distribution platforms are still getting up and running. Stefano.
Yes, it's a follow-up on what we were talking before, because there happened is that the New York Times, BBC, and others are closing their offices in Moscow because they say that the journalists cannot do their work. I think they cannot do the work also because if they just, even in an article, something, write the war or write something that, again, in Russia was outlawed, they can potentially go to prison for 15 years. Now, my question is the Secretary General concerned that, let's say, a UN officer or UN staff that is in Russia now, maybe talking with the Russians about the situation, how to resolve problems in Ukraine, in using the communication with them, using the term war, if it happens, and that's why they will not use it maybe, they can end up to be in trouble.
It's speculation. We're not at all, we are fully confident that the rights and immunities and privileges of UN staff working in Ukraine, working in Russia, will be fully respected.
Because the rights of the journalists were not.
You're asking me, I'm answering the question. On the media, I've said this before, given what is going on with journalists in the area, is that if there was ever a time for the need for a journalist to be able to do their work freely and for people to have access to information freely, it is now. Okay, I will leave it at that. I don't see any more questions, but I do see Paulina, so.